The warning no one took seriously. To the Grand Federation Council. This is not a simple message of diplomacy, nor is it an attempt to discuss trade agreements, political discourse, or peace treaties. No, this is a warning. A grave and urgent one that you must heed before it is too late. I write this as Captain Thalveric of the Lightbringer, a vessel well known for its neutrality and long-standing service in interstellar trade. My crew is composed of many species, drawn from the vast reaches of the Federation. We have traveled far, encountered countless dangers, and seen the best and worst of galactic civilization. But nothing could have prepared me for what I witnessed aboard my own ship. The humans, they are not what you think. You believe them to be average. In terms of intelligence, they hover around the center of galactic norms. Some are brilliant, while others are astoundingly foolish. Their combat abilities, middling at best. The weakest of them cower before threats, while the strongest among them are walking calamities. Their adaptability is their strongest known trait, making them capable of surviving in places where other species would falter and die. But even this is not the true danger of their existence. No, the true danger of humanity, the thing that sets them apart from every species in this galaxy, is something I had not considered until it was too late. Their unrelenting, irrational, and downright terrifying devotion to their young. The crew and the human named Carrie. Among my crew was a human woman named Carrie Anders, a janitor. That was all. She was no warrior, no scientist, no high-ranking officer, just a janitor. I had hired her based on the recommendation of a human harbor master who assured me that humans were diligent workers. And indeed, Carrie performed her duties well. She cleaned, restocked, and ensured the ship's vending machines remained operational. But there was something strange about her. Carrie had a habit of spending her free time with the younglings aboard the ship. It was not unusual. Many species are fond of their young, and some even care for the offspring of others. But humans took it further. Within mere weeks, Carrie had become more than just a janitor. She had become the guardian, protector, and beloved companion of every youngling on board. She played with them, told them stories, created strange Earth games that had them running through the ship, hiding in ventilation shafts, and laughing uncontrollably. Even the Exani bridlings, a notoriously difficult species to please, adored her. She fed them treats from Earth, gave them silly nicknames, and most strangely of all, she would willingly put herself in harm's way for them. At first, I thought nothing of it. Humans were known for their social nature, after all. But in hindsight, I should have recognized the warning signs. The attack. It happened during a routine cargo haul to a human outer world colony. Our ship, unarmed and non-military, was carrying red spice and medical equipment. Valuable, but not worth dying over. We were ambushed by the Rani pirates, specifically the King's Masons, a gang feared across the stars. They did not negotiate. They disabled our engines, breached our ship, and began their attack. I had seen pirate raids before, quick, brutal, and efficient. They kill the defiant, plunder what they can, and leave before Federation authorities arrive. I had resigned myself to the inevitable loss of cargo and crew. We would survive, but our dignity would not. But the pirates made a fatal mistake. They bypassed the main cargo bay and cut through the ship's lower decks, intending to work their way up. Unfortunately for them, this put them in direct contact with Carrie and the younglings. A janitor's wrath. I do not know exactly what happened in those first moments. The security feeds were destroyed in the attack, but the aftermath, that is something I will never forget. A Rani warrior, the first to breach, stumbled upon Carrie and the younglings hiding in the crew quarters. He must have thought them easy prey, for he laughed as he approached. The Rani loved to boast about their cruelty, their enjoyment in causing fear. Carrie did not cower. She stood her ground, placing herself between the pirate and the children. She refused to surrender. The pirate, annoyed by her defiance, struck her hard across the face. She did not fall. Instead, she looked at him with a cold, calculating fury, one that I have never seen in any species before. She told the younglings, "Go hide. We're playing hide and seek. Don't come out until I say the magic words." The pirate, amused by her defiance, reached for one of the younglings. That was when Carrie snapped. I will struggle for the rest of my days to accurately describe what happened next. Words cannot fully encapsulate the sheer ferocity, the brutality, the terrifying efficiency with which this human janitor dismantled an entire squad of battle-hardened pirates with nothing but her bare hands. She did not use a weapon. She was the weapon. She broke bones with terrifying precision. She gouged out eyes with her thumbs. She ripped the teeth from the mouth of the first pirate and used them to stab another. When a second pirate lunged at her with a plasma knife, she twisted his wrist until the bone snapped and drove the blade into his throat. She did not stop. With wild, animalistic rage, she dismembered them, ripping off arms, breaking knees, using their own severed limbs as bludgeoning weapons. She did things even the Mandan eviscerator drones would find excessive. Then, at the height of the carnage, she found one last pirate cowering behind a supply crate. She approached him slowly. He pleaded. He begged. Carrie smiled. She reached down, took one of the Rani grenades, pulled the pin, and forced it into his mouth. The last thing that pirates saw before exploding into a cloud of gore and bone shrapnel was the utterly calm expression of a woman who had just saved her children. The aftermath. By the time the rest of the crew and I arrived, it was over. The pirates were either dead or fleeing. The younglings were completely unharmed. And Carrie, she stood there, covered in blood, breathing heavily, her knuckles raw. Then, as if nothing had happened, she clapped her hands and called out, "Ollie, Ollie, oxen free. I give up. The pizza's on me." One by one, the younglings crawled out from their hiding places, giggling, rushing to tackle her in a playful dogpile. She laughed as if the massacre around her had never happened. I do not understand the species, but you must listen to this warning. Do not, under any circumstances, threaten a human child in the presence of a human caretaker. The consequences will not be war, nor reprisals, nor diplomatic outrage. The consequence will be annihilation. You have been warned. The unsettling aftermath. The silence that followed the massacre was almost as horrifying as the carnage itself. I stood in the doorway, my breath caught in my throat. My crew, hardened veterans of space travel, men and women who had seen battles, wars, and destruction beyond comprehension, stood beside me, frozen in shock. The cargo bay was unrecognizable. The walls were painted red with the splattered remains of the Rani pirates. The floor was littered with bodies, some missing limbs, others reduced to nothing but gore-streaked skeletons. And in the center of it all stood Carrie Anders, the janitor, a human woman covered in blood and viscera, her chest rising and falling with steady, measured breaths. Her expression was calm, almost serene. There was no sign of rage left in her eyes, no trace of the storm that had consumed her moments ago. Instead, she looked normal. That was what unsettled me the most. She had just slaughtered dozens of pirates with her bare hands, and yet here she was, standing amidst the bodies like it was just another Tuesday. And then, just like that, she smiled and clapped her hands together. "Ollie, Ollie, oxen free." She called out cheerfully, her voice warm and inviting. "I give up. The pizza's on me." For a brief, agonizing moment, the silence stretched. Then, like magic, the younglings began to emerge from their hiding places. They crawled out of ventilation shafts, slipped from behind crates, poked their heads out from under supply shelves. Their eyes lit up with joy as they ran towards Carrie, their small limbs tackling her in a playful dogpile. She laughed. The woman who had just ripped teeth from a pirate's skull with her bare hands was now giggling like a carefree sibling, playfully wrestling the younglings as they jumped on her. I heard my second in command, a hardened Xilari warrior, mutter something in his native tongue. A prayer. Not for us. For the dead pirates. Because what else could you do after witnessing something so horrifying, so incomprehensible, other than pray for the souls of those who had been foolish enough to cross this human? The arrival of the human fleet. We made the emergency jump to the human outer colony, broadcasting a distress signal the moment we exited hyperspace. Within minutes, human ships arrived. Not a patrol fleet, not private security, but a full-fledged military response force. They were expecting a war. The moment our ship docked, heavily armed Marines stormed the hangar, weapons raised, armor glinting under the station lights. Their leader, a grizzled human with a face full of scars and eyes colder than the void, approached us first. "What happened?" he demanded, voice sharp as a blade. I tried to explain. I told him about the attack, about the Rhine pirates, about the massacre in the cargo bay. I explained, in excruciating detail, how a single human janitor had slaughtered an entire boarding party with her bare hands. The Marine commander listened, his expression unreadable. When I finally finished, he turned his gaze toward Carrie. She stood off to the side, the younglings clinging to her arms and legs, giggling as she whispered jokes to them. She looked up, smiling. "Hey, boss," she greeted casually, as if she hadn't just turned a pirate crew into a collection of scattered body parts. The commander studied her for a long, tense moment. Then, to my complete and utter horror, he shrugged. Shrugged. Like this was normal. Like this was something he had seen before. "Too lenient," he muttered under his breath. I felt my blood run cold. Too lenient. What exactly did that mean? I wanted to ask, to demand an explanation. But before I could form the words, the commander had already moved on, issuing orders to his men. "Secure the ship, run diagnostics, make sure there's no tracking devices left on their hull. Also, get Carrie some clean clothes. She's covered in gore again." Again. That word rattled inside my skull like a loose bolt in a failing engine. Again. As if this had happened before. I could not speak. The human mindset. Over the next few hours, the station personnel helped us repair our ship. My crew received medical treatment. The cargo, what little remained, was secured. But I could not rest. I could not stop thinking about what I had seen. Carrie Anders had single-handedly obliterated a pirate force. And yet no one, not a single human aboard the station, acted surprised. I overheard whispers. Another one. "Yeah, happens every time they go after kids. Dan, you'd think pirates would learn by now." I needed answers. I found myself in the station's command center, standing before the human fleet commander, a man named Admiral Calloway. "Explain," I demanded. "I need to understand." The Admiral sighed, rubbing his temples as if this conversation was one he had endured many times before. "You're asking why Carrie did what she did," he said. I nodded. He leaned back in his chair, his eyes dark and unfathomable. "Because she's human." I waited for more, but he offered nothing else. I clenched my jaw. "That does not explain anything." Admiral Calloway exhaled slowly. "All right. I'll make this simple. You think humans are just average, a race that sits in the middle of the galactic spectrum, neither the strongest nor the weakest, neither the smartest nor the dumbest. And in most cases, you're right. But there's one thing, one single thing, that we do better than anyone else." He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "We protect our own." His words sent a chill down my spine. I had seen many things in my years traveling the stars. I had witnessed battles between warlords, negotiations between empires, acts of heroism and atrocities beyond belief. But never, not once, had I encountered a species that reacted so violently, so instinctively, so irrationally protective of its young. "Every species defends its children," I argued, though my voice lacked conviction. Calloway smirked, but it was a humorless expression. Sure, but no species does it like us. I swallowed hard. You don't understand yet, he murmured. But you will. The warning stands. I left that conversation with more questions than answers. But one thing had become clear. This was not an isolated incident. This was not an anomaly. This was human nature. And the universe had yet to realize just how terrifying that truly was. The lesson humanity teaches. The hours following our arrival at the human colony blurred together. My crew was shaken. The station's personnel were efficient, and the younglings, somehow, were entirely unaffected. Only the non-humans seemed to grasp the horror of what had transpired. But for the humans, it was just another day. I spent the next few hours locked in thought, wrestling with the impossible realization that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology, their intelligence, or even their famed adaptability. It was something far more dangerous. It was their instinct, an instinct so deeply embedded in their being that it overrode logic, reason, and even self-preservation. I had seen species fiercely defend their offspring before. The Varkalians would create entire blood packs to avenge a fallen cub. The Threxians would engage in ritual combat to protect their young. But humans, they did not defend their young. They annihilated anything that dared to threaten them. And that difference was terrifying. A new kind of warrior. Carrie was undergoing a medical examination after the battle. Not because she had been injured, though she bore bruises and dried blood, but because the station's medical staff insisted on checking her vitals. I asked why. A human nurse looked at me like I had grown a second head. She just went full adrenaline for nearly an hour. We need to make sure she isn't about to collapse. I stared. You mean to tell me that humans have the ability to enhance their combat capabilities in times of stress? The nurse blinked, then laughed. Enhance? No, we don't enhance anything. That's just what happens. It's called an adrenaline rush. When we feel threatened, our bodies release chemicals that dull pain, increase speed, and sharpen focus. That was, in itself, alarming. But then she continued. And the best part, it's not even a conscious choice. It just happens. That was when I realized what Carrie truly was. She was not a warrior. She was not a soldier. She was not even trained for combat. And yet she had done what most of my crew, what most of the Federation's elite forces, could never even hope to accomplish. She had fought without hesitation, without fear, without limits. And she had won. If this was what a single untrained human was capable of when pushed to protect their younglings, what would happen if an entire fleet of trained human soldiers were given that same reason? I shuddered at the thought. The unspoken agreement. Later that day, as my crew prepared for departure, I found myself standing next to Admiral Calloway, watching as Carrie casually carried 3 younglings on her back, spinning them around while they giggled uncontrollably. I couldn't reconcile it. This was the same person who had painted my ship's cargo bay with pirate entrails, and yet here she was, acting like an affectionate older sibling, as if the massacre never happened. I turned to the Admiral. I don't understand. He glanced at me. What don't you understand? How can she be that? I gestured toward Carrie, who was now engaging in some bizarre human game, where she let the younglings attempt to tackle her to the ground. How can she be so kind, so gentle, after what she did? Calloway smiled faintly. Because that's how we work. I waited for him to elaborate, but he merely watched the scene unfold, his expression unreadable. After a moment, I spoke again. The Federation does not fear humanity. I said slowly. Most species see you as nothing special, average, even, the middle of every spectrum. That is why you were allowed into the Grand Federation so easily. Calloway snorted. Yeah, we know. But what I have witnessed today, I continued, tells me that we may have all made a grave miscalculation. You are not just another species in the galactic community. No, Calloway admitted. "We're not." I hesitated, then asked the question that had been burning in my mind since the moment I saw Carrie rip a pirate's teeth from his skull with her bare hands. "Does the Federation understand what you are capable of?" The Admiral turned to me fully now, his blue eyes gleaming with something dangerous and knowing. "They will," he murmured. I inhaled sharply. "And when that happens—" Calloway's lips curved into something akin to a smirk, but not quite human in nature. "When that happens," he said, "they'll understand that there are only two kinds of people in this galaxy." I swallowed. "And what are those?" The Admiral's voice was calm, steady, and chillingly certain. "Our friends." His smirk faded. "And the ones who don't live long enough to regret being anything else. The universal rule." It was not long after that my crew and I departed. The Lightbringer was fully repaired, our course set. As we pulled away from the human colony, my thoughts drifted back to the events of the past days. I had been shaken to my core. But more than that, I had learned something that the rest of the Federation would one day be forced to understand. Humanity did not fight for dominance. Humanity did not seek conquest. But if you threatened what they loved, if you dared to touch what was theirs, they would stop at nothing. Not just to defeat you, not just to destroy you, but to erase you from the annals of history itself. And that was a lesson the universe would not soon forget. The Federation's grave mistake. The Lightbringer left human space without further incident. The younglings were safe, the cargo was gone, and the ship had been scrubbed clean of the carnage left in Carrie's wake. Yet, as I sat in my private quarters, staring at the reports in front of me, I knew I was returning to the Grand Federation Council with more than just a routine trade report. I had seen something unthinkable, something that should not be possible, something that, if left unchecked, could change the balance of power in the entire galaxy. But the most unsettling part, the humans did not see it as extraordinary. To them, this was normal. The message I had to deliver. I spent hours drafting my official report to the Federation. Every word felt insufficient. How could I explain what I had seen? How could I convey the sheer terror and awe of what humanity was capable of? I began with the facts. The Rani pirates, notorious for their brutality, had attacked the Lightbringer. A single human, unarmed and untrained, had annihilated them. The younglings under her care were unarmed. Human authorities arrived within minutes, responding with a military force capable of wiping out a small fleet. The human officials were not surprised. It was that last point that I feared most. I had witnessed unspeakable violence. I had seen warriors commit massacres on the battlefield. I had stood in the aftermath of wars that had decimated entire species. But never had I seen a species act with such instinctive, unwavering certainty in its protection of the innocent. It was not driven by duty. It was not calculated by strategy. It was pure biological necessity. Humans were not special until you threatened their young. Then, they became something else entirely. Something the galaxy was not prepared to face. The Council's reaction. When I arrived at the Grand Federation Council, I did not expect them to believe me. And I was correct. The council chambers were a massive construct of gleaming metals and ancient stone, a testament to the thousands of species that made up the Grand Federation. The chamber was filled with representatives from every corner of the galaxy, all gathered for the latest reports and political disputes. When it was my turn to speak, I steeled myself. I explained everything. I told them of the pirates, the attack, and the janitor named Carrie. I detailed the battle, the way she had systematically dismantled the Rani raiders, the sheer brutality of her defense, and the unnerving ease with which she returned to normal afterward. I recounted Admiral Calloway's ominous warning. The council listened in silence. Then, when I had finished, they laughed. The Federation's hubris. "This is absurd," scoffed High Chancellor Velrith of the Drex Dominion, an amphibious species known for their arrogance. A mere human janitor, destroying an entire pirate crew with her bare hands. "Surely, Captain Thalveric, You expect us to believe this? I narrowed my eyes. It is not belief that concerns me, Chancellor. It is reality. You may doubt me, but the Rani do not. Their crew was wiped out. Their fleet will demand retribution. A deep rumbling voice cut through the murmurs of the chamber. You say she fought without weapons? Asked General Kazarek of the Mandan warlords, a species of towering reptilian warriors known for their brute strength. She tore their warriors apart. I nodded. With her hands, she was not trained for battle. She was a janitor. Kazarek narrowed his eyes, his tail flicking in agitation. The other representatives, however, remained skeptical. This report is exaggerated, said Ambassador Excelrin of the Varkalian Empire, her segmented insectoid limbs clicking in disapproval. Even the most vicious war forms require extensive training. You expect us to believe that humans, in their natural state, are this dangerous. I slammed my hands onto the speaking platform, frustration surging through me. Yes, I growled. That is exactly what I am telling you. Silence fell across the chamber. I took a slow breath, steadying myself. You do not understand what I saw, I said, my voice low but unwavering. Humans are not warriors by nature. They are farmers, builders, explorers. They do not seek war. They do not crave battle. I let the weight of my words settle before continuing. But if you threaten what they love, if you harm their young, they do not just fight. I met the eyes of every council member. They erase you. The grave mistake. The council chamber erupted in debate. Some dismissed my warning as exaggeration. Others found my story intriguing. And a few, like General Kazarek, took my words to heart. But the most dangerous voices in the room were the ones who saw opportunity. If humans are so fiercely protective, said Admiral Raxus of the Zeveran Armada, his crimson-hued skin glowing under the chamber's lights, then they are a resource waiting to be utilized. I stiffened. What are you implying, Admiral? The Zeveran smirked. If they are willing to fight for their own kind, then perhaps we should give them something to fight for. I felt a cold dread settle in my gut. You are making a mistake, I warned. If you try to control them, manipulate them, use them. He waved a hand dismissively. We do not need to control them. We merely need to ensure that their fury is pointed in the right direction. I turned to the rest of the council, searching for any sign of reason. This is not something you can harness, I pleaded. It is not something you can contain. If you make the mistake of thinking you can use their instincts to your advantage, you will not just lose. I let my gaze sweep across the chamber. You will burn. The council did not listen. The line has been crossed. As I left the chamber, I could already hear whispers of plans being set into motion. Recruitment, manipulation, strategies to exploit humanity's useful aggression. I clenched my fists. They had no idea what they were about to unleash. Carrie had been just one human. One. And she had annihilated an entire boarding party. I could only imagine what an entire species of enraged, vengeful humans would do if the Federation dared to use them as pawns. I had delivered my warning. Now, it was only a matter of time before the Federation learned their lesson the hard way.